Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, it's been an extremely busy last couple of days for the Florida Gators in the news cycle. Obviously, starting with former five-star cornerback Hermione McLean committing to the Florida Gators. You have the Jaden Rashada saga continuing on, and something that I just think flew under the radar was former Arizona State wide receiver Elijhah Badger also committing to the Florida Gators. Now, the Florida fans who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of weeks know I'm a massive Elijhah Badger fan. Quite frankly, I think he's an NFL caliber wide receiver that just was dealing with dreadful quarterback play the last 2 years at Arizona State. But more importantly, and I think Elijhah Badger and his skill set fit exactly what Billy Napier and this program were looking for. You take a look at how Florida wants to operate their passing attack. It's predicated in getting the football out in space, letting their wide receivers operate after the catch. You take a look at Elijhah Badger, over 500 yards after the catch in 2023. Dill had 26 missed tackles forced. Those are better numbers than some running backs had in 2023. You are looking at not only a veteran to come into a relatively young wide receiver room, but I think more importantly, a difference maker after the catch. That's exactly what Florida's looking for. Want to get into the film, talk about what Elijhah Badger brings to this Gators offense before we get into it. And as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, the Florida Gator fans. It's been a blast talking this program over the last couple of weeks, but more importantly, the amount of support you guys have shown, it truly does mean a lot. We can't thank y'all enough. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We got a lot of Florida Gators to work through for some film breakdowns this summer. And Dill, I know you're a big-time Elijhah Badger fan as well. As Michigan fans, we were hoping he'd find his way to Ann Arbor. I'll give you the T-box here. Elijhah Badger, the Florida Gators, what's he bring?
Oh, and we certainly could have used him in Ann Arbor. Just that crafty veteran presence, a guy who's been really productive in you're right, it's just been a really weak offense. Has never really got that air raid going a whole lot in Arizona State, but a guy I think they needed, because when you watch the way Billy Napier likes to run his offense, it's a lot of play action, a lot of working across the field. And when you're doing that, you need to be able to find space. You need to be able to throttle your routes in and out to work into that space. And I think that's something you saw Ricky Pearsall do a really, really good job in last year. And when I watch Elijhah Badger, just has that craftiness, has that savviness to kind of thrive, I think, in the way Billy Napier wants to, again, work across the field and find your hole.
So 2 notes on that one. Florida has had a lot of success going to Arizona State, grabbing wide receivers. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall worked out exceptionally well for Florida. Secondly, I think you make a great point. I think a lot of people like to gravitate towards the circus catches that Ricky Pearsall made. I mean, he has some serious athletic ability. I think back to that Charlotte game, I think that was the best catch I've ever seen, at least in the 2023 season. But what nobody ever talked about with Ricky Pearsall, and I think partially why he went so much higher than a lot of people expected, was, I mean, that dude was so crafty. You talk about sitting it down in zone coverage, making yourself presentable to the quarterback. The small things that kind of fly under the radar that lead to winning games, that's what Ricky Pearsall did. You look at Elijhah Badger, you kind of get this similar vibe that Ricky Pearsall had. Now you get into the film, Dill, we got to start with, what he can do after the catch. Exceptional numbers, right? Over 500 yards after the catch, 26 missed tackles forced. Again, numbers that are better than running backs with the football. You start taking a look at the film. This kind of just reminds you of what Elijhah Badger brought, or what this Florida Gators offense looked like last year, right? Hey, we're just going to get the ball out quick. You got Jaden Rashada throwing him the rock here. We're just going to get the football out quick to Elijhah Badger, and we're going to let him operate after the catch, right? He is a guy that is 6'2", 200 pounds. He is hard to bring down, and when it comes to getting in the open space, he can cook a little bit, make people miss. Obviously, I think steps out of bounds right there, but you kind of get a flavor of what Elijhah Badger brings to this Florida offense. And you take a look at Oklahoma State in 2022. You got another former Florida Gator here with Emory Jones slinging the rock here. Dill, this is what you were kind of talking about, right? Work in the middle of the field, not only making yourself presentable to the quarterback, but the craftiness to know what to do after the catch. And it's hard to identify, but you kind of know it when you see it. When you watch the film of Elijhah Badger, you kind of see it, right? Running that drag over the middle of the field, making himself presentable to Emory Jones. And when I get the ball, I just know what I need to do after the catch. I'm going to make someone miss, make a 15-yard completion, turn into a 30-yard completion. And again, those are the hidden yards that win you football games. And I think Elijhah Badger kind of brings that to the table for Florida.
And again, we talk about just the way Billy Napier likes to run his offense. It does, when you can work in space and you can run with the ball, it's big time. You saw how effective Eugene Wilson was working in the flats, working across the middle. And again, you see Elijhah Badger, just like what you talked about, that sense of what to do. And yeah, that's a really hard thing, I think, for a lot of guys, where you can feel what the coverage is, where it's going. You can sit down where you need to, like he did against Oklahoma State, sitting into the middle, not overrunning it into where the safety is going to be, and then beating the corner to the outside. It's just stringing together a bunch of different things, being able to be aware of what's going on around you. And again, that's a big thing for wide receivers. And when you look at Florida, Eugene Wilson started to show that ability towards the end of the year, but you didn't really necessarily have that one guy when Ricky Pierce left.
Yeah, and you know how you get those traits by playing football. I mean, Elijhah Badger's going into his 5th year. You look at this Florida Gators wide receiver room, a ton of talent. And it obviously starts with Eugene Wilson. You could go to Aiden Mizell and Andy Jean and potentially Tank Hawkins coming in as a true freshman. Those guys are young. They're still getting their feet wet at the college football level. Elijhah Badger comes into a room and kind of presents that veteran craftiness that you're looking for. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is what he can do vertically down the field. Now, I'm not going to get up here and say he is a vertical deep threat. I think that's why they brought in a guy like Tremere Dike, that bigger body that can make those contested catches.
But that's also like why you have Andy Jean and some of these younger guys who, again, can really, really burn it. In that, he doesn't need to be that guy, I don't think, for Florida. What he needs to do is fill kind of the role of, again, what Ricky.
Yeah, and I mean, Aiden Mizell, phenomenal track times. You look at a guy like Jere Hawkins coming in as a true freshman, he might be one of the fastest players in all of college football. But you do look at Elijhah Badger and say, if the opportunity presents himself and you see they're walking that safety into the box, when you have that one-on-one coverage on the boundary here, is going to be at the bottom of your screen. I mean, he can stack wide receivers, work vertically. And again, this is a 6'2", 200-pound wide receiver. He knows how to go up and make plays in those contested catch situations. You look back at Florida last year, and I think we talked about it a lot during the 2023 season and this offseason. I mean, average depth of target for Graham Mertz was only 6.5 yards down the field. And I think partially was the offensive line. I think partially was kind of getting that confidence with Graham Mertz. But I think also you didn't have a ton of wide receivers that could work vertically down the field. I think Elijhah Badger represents a guy that certainly can make that happen. And the last couple of plays that I just want to get off really quick. One, you look at Elijhah Badger. This is kind of Ricky Pearsall-esque, right? Working at the bottom of your screen. You can't see him right now, but you're going to see Elijhah Badger. I mean, this is 3rd and 13. We're rushing 4, dropping 7. The throwing windows are going to be tight. Emory Jones stepping up. Elijhah Badger just going to make himself presentable, knows where to sit it down in zone coverage when the throwing windows are tight, and be a quarterback-friendly wide receiver. And the last rep I want to get to here is, hey, we can just create separation too. Like if you're going to – I don't think I had that play pulled up. We're going to have to throw that back to you. All right, 3rd and 13. We're good. Stanford. And what you're going to see here is working the bottom of your screen. I apologize for my technical difficulties on the reps here. I mean, 3rd and 13, we're rushing 4, dropping 7. Elijhah Badger's going to sit it down. Tight window. Emory Jones hits him where he needs to. I mean, those hidden plays, moving the chains on 3rd and 13, that's winning football. That's quite frankly what you didn't see enough of from this Florida Gators program. In the last rep here, again, you want to put him one-on-one coverage in the red zone. He's a guy that can route you up, can create separation. You got to have these kind of wide receivers. Top of your screen here working against this Washington defensive back. I mean, we know how to create separation. Come back to the ball, be physical, fight off hands. I mean, those are the type of stuff that Elijhah Badger brings to this Florida Gators offense. And Dill, you start looking at this Florida Gators wide receiver room, it turned into, I mean, we came into the offseason kind of having some question marks. Replacing a guy like Ricky Pearsall, it was going to be a young wide receiver room. You had Tremere Dike, you had Elijhah Badger, 2 guys that have played a ton of football throughout their career. I suddenly look at this Florida wide receiver room and say, Graham Mertz has got some weapons heading into 2024.
No, I mean, I think you love what the wide receiver room looks like now. I mean, Elijhah Badger, again, probably steps in, might be the most complete wide receiver on this team. Not going to say he's the best. I do think Eugene Wilson is going to be their leading guy. He will be he's going to be number 1 for sure. But just looking at what Elijhah Badger's done for his career, just the ability to catch the ball, doesn't really drop it, can run after the catch. there's not really a skill set he doesn't have. And again, he doesn't have the electricity possibly that Eugene Wilson's going to bring, or possibly Aiden Mizell might be bringing to this Florida team. But he does add that completeness. And I think that was one of the things you were looking at, like, man, who's just going to be the guy on 3rd and 11 is going to get to the sticks and make the play you need him to make. And I'm not saying Eugene Wilson can't, but you did want another guy to run with him. You wanted that a guy, again, it's the guy you knew what you were going to get.
I look at this Florida wide receiver room and think two things. One, this is how you want your wide receiver room to look. Like, you have some veteran, wily wide receivers in Elijhah Badger and Shamir DK. You sprinkle in some electric young talent, obviously headlined by Eugene Wilson, but Aiden Mizell. I'm going to throw in Tank Hawkins as well. I mean, this is a guy that is going to be electric for the Florida Gators. But I think secondly, when you look at those starting wide receivers, at least what we project to be the starting 3 wide receivers, you got guys that can attack all parts of the field, right? Eugene Wilson, one of the best wide receivers attacking that short intermediate route tree. You look at Elijhah Badger, where does he thrive? Kind of those deeper intermediate route trees. And then you have a guy in Shamir DK who can work vertically down the field and kind of make safeties respect what Florida's going to do working 20-plus yards down the field, something we just didn't see Florida attack enough in 2023. I think you got a super underrated quarterback in Graham Mertz. I think you have revamped your offensive line. And I look at this wide receiver and say, I get you just lost a first-round NFL wide receiver. You got just more guys that can do some different things. And I think for Florida Gator fans, I think you have to be just fired up about what this program, what this offense can be in 2024 with the addition of Elijhah Badger. We'll cut it at that. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.